Last week on the Nicoletti Show. Without further ado, let's welcome to the show, Bhaskar. What's going on, man?
Everybody wants time on their hands, right? And they want to be able to live on their terms. When you've mastered your craft, it becomes fairly stress-free. I heavily invested in trainings for myself. It was important for me to network heavily. It was important for me to gain knowledge. Training for yourself and for your virtual assistants or for your in-person team is super key. The success of my business depends critically on my knowledge and my skill set. You truly are the sum total of the 5 people you hang out with. You can't think of yourself as the little fish. You got to think of yourself as a $20 million company. If you're not in love with the product that you're pushing, why is anyone else going to buy it from you? Ultimately, for you, what works for you is what works for you. I don't know much about probate. Well, guess what? I have Al Nicoletti for that, who's a part of School of Sharks, and I can ask a question, and Al comes and answers that question. You can't build a full-time business on part-time hours, on part-time effort.
Bhaskar, you're the man. Thank you again so much for being on my show.
Thank you so much for having me, man. My honor, my pleasure. Always love talking to you. Thanks.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Wednesday night show on the Nicoletti Show. I am so happy you all are here and watching the show tonight, Wednesday night, and you all are in for a treat. This is going to be a special episode. I got 2 guys that are killing it in the Florida market, in the Southwest Florida area, and they're going all over Florida, and they're going to talk about a lot of things with their systems, processes, hiring, building a team, how they really got started with their partnership and got into the real estate world. But we're going to save the best for last. The best for last is how they are really diving in the weird and different world of things that are messy on title when it comes to finding heirs and using a new system and diving in on the REI SIFT world and really getting into finding the messy things, right? So a lot of times the weird deals are the more lucrative deals and they have a lot more room in them. But I'll say this, when you hear it from them and what they've been doing over the last 2 to 3 years, crushing it. And when I met these guys, I mean, from the beginning, they were all hyped up, ready to go, hungry. So I can't wait to introduce them on the episode, the in-person episode. So you'll see them in a second. But you all know, I got to do the introduction. I'm all hyped up for this episode. We've been waiting for this for about a year, and we'll talk about that. So here we go. Let's let it rip. Hey, everybody, my name is Al Nicoletti. I'm an attorney here in Florida, and welcome to the Al Nicoletti Show, where I bring on real estate super investors, rising rock stars, movers and shakers, and leaders of clubs in their community that educate, entertain, and inspire all things on Florida real estate and things that are going beyond the Florida real estate market, talking about some of the unique systems and tools that you can implement in your real estate systems on how you can take your business and your real estate business to the next level. I'm so excited to be here in the studio, in-person studio with Mark Rado and Dominic Andreoli. Like, these guys are killing it in their market. And it's the first time we've been doing a 2-person in-person podcast, and we're going to talk about so many things today. I can't wait. And how I met these guys through all the things investing and doing all the things in the real estate world. It's super exciting. So I'm here to welcome them on the show. I'm so excited. Without further ado, Mark, Dominic, hey, you're on the Nicoletti Show, guys.
I can't believe we made it. Thank you so much. This is awesome. Awesome.
This is an enlightening experience.
Yeah.
Being
in person, it's different.
Exactly.
Definitely.
And we've been talking about this for so long, so I'm just glad. I know because of COVID and everything going on, I'm so glad we finally made it here. So it's awesome.
It's crazy too, because I remember we kind of talked about this like a year ago, and I was like, guys, I'm starting the podcast, or I was rolling in the podcast, really. I think it was through season 1. And I remember texting one of you and I was like, hey, we got to have you on the show. And I remember it was like, well, we're not there yet.
That was me.
That was Mark. Yeah,
that was me.
We're not there yet. We really want to, get our systems and our processes in place. You were going through things with land and single family and trying to find your groove. But then recently I remember we were talking and you were like, no, we're ready. I mean, look, you guys got the t-shirts now. I mean, the progression, the brand, the logo, the progression of where you've gotten today is so impressive. I've been able to see it. And I know you've been showing everybody, like even in the Southwest Florida area, how you've been doing it. So we got to talk about this before we dive in on the juicy stuff when it comes to finding deals and hiring and scaling. How did you guys, I mean, either one of you start, how did it start for you before you got into real estate? What was that transition like to the point you are now?
Yeah.
I think this is something that you should definitely be starting here.
We'll do that.
Go for it.
So a little background on me. I'm from South Florida. Went to school at the University of Florida. Gainesville's a small town, and it's a growing town. But I was a finance major, and during that time, I was thinking, do I really want to spend the next 50 years of my life in an office, doing the same monotonous things? And entrepreneurship kind of popped up, but it was like, what would that look like? And then from entrepreneurship, real estate popped up. And so what I was trying to do, I discovered wholesaling, and it was like, okay, I got to get my first deal. And ended up, starting with Driving for Dollars in Gainesville because it was just optimal market for that. And came across this. It was a duplex, but it was, really run down. And I had no experience at this point. I didn't even know what a purchase agreement was or an assignment contract. But I found this property, and I knew that it had to be a motivated seller from, back taxes, whatnot. And I found a buyer. So I had all these pieces together, but I didn't really know where to kind of go from there. So I'd seen a Facebook Live of someone, believe it or not, in that market that was doing a really good job. So I reached out to him. And Brett, you've actually had him on this podcast.
Brett McCullum,
So reached out to him. He worked the sell side or the acquisition side. I worked the dispo side, and we got it done. From there, I kind of did some mentorship under him with lead management, kind of got acclimated to what that looked like. And then after leaving Gainesville, started Florida Sell Now, and Mark can kind of take it from there.
Yeah, it was crazy because, Brett connected us on that crazy deal. And I remember Brett and I were working on those probate deals, and then your deal came up, and it was like, wait a second, go talk to Al about this one. And we'll talk about that story and how that happened. But Mark, tell us, like, how did it all begin for you? And you got to tell us the hungry story, because I didn't know about that. Except for being backstage when that came up from Dominic, like, what's that all about? Like, how did you get from where you were growing up to now in this point? I mean, killing it.
Right. Yeah. So it's funny because not a lot of people know that about me. So I know you just found out yourself, but yeah, originally I was born and raised in Hungary in Europe. And so when I was about 11, 12 years old, I had moved out to the United States here. Initially, I had moved to Dallas, Texas. And so we lived there. I lived there probably 4 or 5 years. I can't even remember anymore. But yeah, I lived in, I went to middle school. Well, I finished elementary school, went to middle school, and then started high school. I started there. And then going into my sophomore year, I had moved down to Naples, Florida, South Florida. And so I went to high school there. I went to Florida Gulf Coast University, got a degree in finance, economics. And so it was funny because I had never ever even had a plan of getting into real estate at the time, or at least I had never thought of it, And so I had one of my best friends, his dad, he runs he owns an energy company based out of Dallas, and so I kept in touch with them even after moving down to Florida. So my plan was after college, I was planning on moving back to Dallas and working for him. But it was funny because I had just graduated. Actually, no, I was still in college at the time. And I remember Dominic and I, we were friends. We didn't actually know each other in high school. We went to the same high school, but we didn't know each other.
Interesting.
Back then. So we just had the same friend group. So we started hanging around, hanging out with each other after high school. Really, you were, I think, almost done with college at the time, right?
I think I was in my junior year of college at the time when we met.
That's crazy. We'll
Yeah.
we'll dive in on how this all kind of
Yeah.
brewed up and got started. But
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, I had never planned on even getting into real estate, but the thing with me was I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Right. So one thing I knew was I liked finance. I liked data. I liked, doing calculations, numbers. That's just always something I had liked. But I had never really knew what I wanted to do. And so while I was still in college, I remember 2019, fall of 2019, Dominic had kind of started talking to me about real estate and about what he does, and I had absolutely no idea what it even was. Remember that in the
Yeah.
beginning? Like
Yeah.
I had no idea.
He didn't know if an assignment of contract was legal at the time. And I was like, no, dude,
I didn't
trust
even
me,
know if
it's
wholesaling,
legal.
wholesaling was legal at the time. I just didn't know because that's not really something that I've ever, come across
right.
before then. So he had, Dominic just kind of kept talking to me about it. And then one time he came to me, he was like, hey, I got this, deal under contract. Can you help me find a buyer? And I was just like, what do you mean? So I had really just dove in head first, started helping him out, started making some Facebook posts and Facebook groups. And I had found a buyer, actually a realtor who helped us find a buyer for that deal. And so that was really the start of it all. Right. And like I said, at the time, as I'm helping Dominic, I'm still kind of just learning everything as is. And so I started watching a ton of YouTube videos about real estate investing, wholesaling, all that stuff. And as time went on, like I said, I just kept educating myself, but I was still working a full-time job next to being a full-time student in college. And I was working at a beach hotel in Naples. And then COVID first hit, right? Keep in mind, by the way, that deal.
Wow. So it really, I mean, that's crazy. So it really just got started once COVID hit.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, we were actually both working a corporate job. I had accepted an offer at Merrill Lynch, and he was working at a hospitality company in Naples. So
Yeah.
it was kind of crazy.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
it was crazy. It was crazy. But so that deal that I just talked to you guys about, so we ended up closing on that deal. And but like I said, at the time, I'm still a full time student in college. I was still working full time. I was a supervisor. We were just putting out beach shares. I liked what I was doing at the time, especially next to college. It was great. But I knew deep down that, I was still at that point of like not really knowing what I wanted to do. And I was just getting closer and closer to finishing college and graduating. So when the pandemic hit, everyone obviously, no one was really working. Everything was shut down, closed. And so I went to Dominic. I said, well, I've been looking more and more into real estate. And so I want to kind of jump in with you and just see what I can do. Right. And so I kind of, we didn't have at the time, we didn't really have any partnership. I was just like, let me just see what I can do here. Let me see. Right. And so really, I mean, we just jumped in, started making cold calls left and right, pretty much all day, every day. I mean, we really started with zero capital.
Yeah.
That's crazy too. Like you didn't start really with anything. I mean, how were you able to fund what you were doing at the time? Like what was the source?
We scraped together money at the time and really got our start in it with bandit signs. We would map it out. We would take a map in an area we wanted to target, and we would highlight the little intersections or corners we were going to put a sign. So it was pre-navigated, and then we'd go out like probably around 10, 11 p.m. at night because that's when there wasn't as much traffic, and just put these signs out at night. And then during the day, we would also put together lists and cold call those lists. So a lot of sweat equity in the beginning, but we lucked out with those bandit signs in the beginning. It definitely paved the way for where we're at now. So
it's crazy because you look back at what was working then, and then you look back, you're like, we wouldn't do that again. Like we've moved totally on from that adventure, but that really showed you the possibilities, right? Like you had to do trial and error to see what would work. And thankfully that really worked for what you were doing. I mean, I've seen several people talk about that, at networking events about bandit signs and how that kind of started for them. So that worked for you two in the beginning. And then we'll talk about how you guys are transitioned into like doing the cool stuff with the innovative things that you want to get into. But I gotta say, what's so unique about it is the partnership. And I think I've been open with you guys about that. I've talked to you both about that at dinners and stuff. And like, I think what's so unique about it is like, you guys didn't really plan on it. It wasn't like you went somewhere to some meeting and, you know, or maybe you did one deal. It was like, all right, let's keep doing deals. It was, you described it. It's like, you just started going into it. You just started going into the deals and just starting to hit the dialers and the cold call. And then over time, things have morphed into, you guys are just a unique partnership. You're a unique duo. I can only cite, and I don't know if I really start making a list of the duos that I know out there, it's rare. Like in the Yellowbird, you got Pat Flynn and Kyle Paskowitz. I mean, those guys are, I mean, and what their partnership is, they're different mindsets, right? One's dealing a lot more with the networking side and then the analytics side, right? Which kind of reminds me of Mark on the analytics side. Dominic, you're more on the phones and dealing with the sellers, right? Then you got Dominic and Dominic Felix and Gonzalo Corzo at the Cash Geeks. Totally different in what they're doing. You know, G's more on the acquisition and dispo side, leading that way, and Dom's focused on the business side of things. And it's really unique. It's rare to come across it. And I've told you guys that this is a really unique partnership. And I think getting into that part, how do you guys balance those? Like, you know, finding your strengths. How'd you find your roles in what you're doing? And what are your thoughts on really finding that partnership that works and making it grow? Because it's not just today. You guys are committed by having the shirts on. You guys are committed. And I'm impressed by it because it's hard to find that kind of partnership. How do you make it work?
Right. Yeah. So it's that's a great question. Actually, there's a lot of people that tell us, hey, you know, the partnership you guys have is a very unique one, right? And especially knowing, like I said, that we were friends prior to getting started within the real estate industry. And so it was not really something that we ever planned, right? It was just, especially in the beginning, because we started off with absolutely zero capital, you know. So at the time, it was really just like, well, let's just cold call, right? And then over time, we really started noticing, you know, that trust was there. It was always there between the two of us. We always knew that we could trust each other. But over time, we started really noticing, you know, the different kind of departments and different parts of the operation of the business that I'm leaning towards. I was the one, you know, really focusing on putting lists together, pulling the list, getting all that data, getting it skip traced. Just because I'm, you know, I would say I'm a pretty analytical guy. And Dominic, I think the partnership that we have is really unique just because we complement each other really well, right?
Yeah, I mean, right now, Mark is in charge, like you said, of operations, and I'm in charge of sales. So our acquisitions guys, the lead manager, callers, I'm just making sure deals are getting to the title company, transaction coordination. So in the beginning, like you said, you know, it was just kind of this all-out war mentality, like, let's just get a deal, like by whatever means necessary. But as time went on, you know, it became prevalent that, hey, you're good at certain things and I'm good at other certain things. In fact, we actually, the beginning of this year, we took a DISC assessment. If you've ever done that, it's a personality assessment. I highly, highly recommend it. And it basically is like spot on. It's the most accurate psychological assessment I've ever taken. And unbeknownst to us, like the two letters that we were, each letter of DISC corresponds to a personality. They actually complemented each other, which that was not really planned. He's like an analytical, logical, logistical kind of personality, and
Maybe
I'm more
too
like
much sometimes.
I've heard Mark walk through a whole scenario. I'm like, he's breaking it down as he goes. I know.
Yeah, and then mine was more so like interpersonal, I guess, sociable type of personality. But those fit really well, especially when you have to manage a team of people. And you can't have two people that have the same skill sets. It's never going to work. So it, in fact, worked out for us because we didn't plan for that. And
it's crazy. Like you didn't plan for that. And how would you have, known? I mean, over time working together, you ended up having the different qualities that you needed.
Yeah.
Right. So it's crazy. And you guys are friends. Like you're around each other a lot. I mean, you're working together,
Yeah.
friends together. I mean, it's hard to find that kind of thing work because, again, you'll go to networking events and partnerships will be a topic about, whether it's good, finding the right one.
Yeah.
Do you need one? Do you have to, get into one? Is it even needed? Can you do it on your own? But this just works out. And every time I talk to you guys, like it's amazing. It's so different. And each one is doing their own thing, but it's amazing, like the growth of it. And I love seeing it and, keep going with
Appreciate
it.
it.
Yeah.
Thank
Keep
you.
growing, keep finding that rhythm together. And like I told you both, don't lose it. Like this is huge. It's a big opportunity because this means that this is going to help the scaling and the growth, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, and when we kind of looked into that DISC assessment, we also have a mentor that said something to the effect of like, you need to put your personalities to those roles. And that's when we kind of broke it up and said, okay, you're operations, I'm sales. And since doing that, that's when we noticed like exponential growth in the business.
Wow.
I think it's that important to do that. So.
Well, ever since you guys really got going, got started, got going with the partnership, moved on probably from the bandit signs, started getting more into like, I don't know, public records and stuff like that. You've really scaled the business and started the hiring process, right? And like I told everybody out there, we're getting to the juicy stuff. We're getting to the good stuff with the stories, but it's this whole buildup of how it all got started that's so important before you get there. The lead up to it about building the team and scaling the team and hiring the right people that helps get to this point. And you'll see how it's really helped bringing on the right team members to now get where they are. So like, talk to us about the hiring process as you guys have grown. You're getting more inbound leads. I remember you talked about, the dialer got turned up. You guys were just getting so many leads, and it was time to bring on somebody to handle the role that you were in, which is that's got to be a hard transition too. Finding a Dominic 2.0 that understands what that is. But talk to us about what that's been like on the growth level, on scaling and finding the right people, the right fit for what you're doing.
Yeah. So we made our first hire over a year ago, and that was a cold caller. We were like, oh my gosh, we have an employee. Like this is crazy. So we had a Filipino cold caller, and we had him on a bulk dialer, just calling, 40 hours a week. So that was kind of our first experience with the team. And gradually, we added another caller a couple months after that, once we started closing deals. But what was really unique about our first in-house, like American caller, was that wasn't really planned. We got a call randomly one day, and it was from someone in, they lived out of state, and they're like, yeah, I saw your listing for a job, and I was curious. I want to get into real estate. And I turned to Mark. I was like, did we make a listing and I'm unaware of it? Because if so, that's bad that I didn't, I should know that I made a listing that I didn't know that exists. But we had the conversation with him, and it was kind of like, well, we need an acquisitions person, because that's what I was doing at the time, was acquisitions, dealing with the sellers. And as you continue to scale and grow a company, it's hard to be doing that while doing 30 million different things and figuring out how you're going to grow the company. So we kind of were like, all right, well, we'll give it a shot. And kind of gave a grace period where gradually had him cold call. And in the short interim that he cold called, he got a really good deal in Brevard County. And we're like, all right, you're our acquisitions manager.
That's it. You're hired.
you're the guy. And he came on January of this year, and he's been working full time for us since, and he's killing it.
Yeah.
Killing it. He does a great job. So, and he's not a stone cold like shark negotiator of like, sign the contract, here's the numbers. Like he really does listen to people's needs and the situation and how we can provide that value. And I think in this line of work, that's more important than simply just like, these are the numbers. If they don't work, sorry, we're out. So, and then from there, Mark has been working to kind of look for unique callers that fit the marketing campaigns that we're planning for. So we've scaled up our cold callers now. And then we also brought on a lead manager
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you brought more on since.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've brought on a decent
Wow.
amount of people. So we have a lead manager, and he's running the comps as they come in live every day, and assigning the hot and warm to our acquisitions manager, and then he'll follow up with the cold leads and put them on a sequence. And at some point, their circumstances change and hopefully convert. And then he's been working on a data department. We've hired out a decent amount of people dealing with data. You can touch on that.
Yeah. So we actually have two full-time data managers as well. So and they're both killing it for us as well. But really, just going back to hiring our acquisition manager, Tygan. It was just funny. Just wanted to add on to what you were saying. So when we had received a call from our acquisition manager, Tygan, Dominic turned to me after, because he had like a 45-minute conversation with him. And Dominic turns to me and he's like, I really like him. I think he's special. I think he would be a perfect fit for this role. But did you make a job post that like you didn't tell me online? And I was just like, no. And he was like, you can tell him. Dominic was like, you can tell me. I was like, why would I lie to you about a job post? And so it turned out that I guess there was there's another company here in Florida with a very similar name to ours. And so I guess maybe they had a job posting as well. Well, we didn't, but they had one, I would assume. And so our acquisition manager had applied to, I guess he wanted to apply to that position. But when he looked us up online on Google, our website came up. And so that's why he reached out to us and had, a great conversation with Dominic. And I remember after that, Dominic he was like, Dominic has these hunches where he's like, I think this person would be a really good fit. And he's very, very accurate with that.
Interesting.
And for example, this was a situation where Dominic had come to me and he was like, I think he would be a perfect fit for exactly what we're looking for, and like I said, but we weren't hiring, right? So we kind of had to sit down and figure out, okay, well, the plan wasn't really to hire, especially not an acquisition manager. So how can we go about, doing this and actually making it work for everyone? So long story short, we made it work. It was very, very unexpected at first, but it's going back to what Dominic was also saying about the DISC assessment. Taking that, I don't know about you, but at least for me, it has really opened my eyes to not just for ourselves and our skill sets and the positions that we're in, but also seeing common characteristics in the people that work for us, right? Because like one thing with Tygan, our acquisition manager, is he's very, very good at just talking to people on the phone, and it's a very, very strong skill set, and it's a great skill set that he's got. And just after taking that DISC assessment, it has been I really started noticing like we have got to start putting people in the right seats, because otherwise it's going to be very, very difficult to grow, right? And so the goal is when you're scaling, you have got to make sure you've got the right people in the right seats. Otherwise, it's just going to become very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And either, your expenses are going to go through the roof, or you're just not really getting anywhere with it. And so like I said, after that DISC assessment is really when things just started clicking for us. And really, I think we both opened our eyes and started seeing, where maybe we might have been going wrong or just not focusing on. And that's when we really upped the ante on hiring out more positions so that we, to allow us to focus more on working on the business and not just in the business,
right.
Which is just absolutely crucial, right? Because when you're just so focused on, the small tasks, it really does weigh you down. It really does weigh you down. So having the right team is just, it's critical. Yeah, it's absolutely critical.
And it's crazy too, because once you start pulling back about being in the business, and then being more on the business, as soon as you start pulling back from that, and then all of a sudden maybe there's a hire that all of a sudden leaves, or maybe there's a role that needs to be filled, and then you find yourself going back to that, your mindset is, I don't want to go back to that. We got to find the right person for this, right? Like I've seen the transition on things I've worked on, and I've wanted, to try to do less, right, on some of those things. And then if you got to go back to it more, you're like, whoa, this is
Right.
so finding that right person is critical. So you fill that slot, right? And it's a testament to both of you. Tigan's been killing it on follow-up, texting people. I can name like 2 guys off the top of my head that I would put on Tigan's level. And that is Logan, Alex Ottewell's VA. Logan's killed it. And then Ian, working with Ryan Rice. I mean, you guys have a great guy that's killing it when it comes to, and the fact that I know the name on a first name basis is an awesome thing. When you have that kind of employee and helping, grow the team, it's huge. But you actually said something that's really interesting, Mark. So the thing that's interesting about you two is that you recognize a trait in Dominic that he's able to really like spot onto something. And I'm sure that happens with Mark as well. But that's what's so interesting is that you're able to recognize that. And while he may be oblivious to the fact that he knows that, you know that, so then you partner up and talk about it and make the right hiring moves, which is really interesting about it. The self-awareness of what you're able to do in your business helps the both of you.
Oh, absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
100%.
That's huge. That's huge. So we know when it comes to all of what you guys are doing in growing, a big part of it has been the networking side of things, right? So, maybe going to the meetings or talking to people. But I remember you guys told me the story about like before you even got deep into this, you were at some house networking or something, and you met some cop, and by talking to the cop, you were able to really find out some really cool ways of talking to people. What was that story?
Right. So that's actually, if you want to kind of break that down, that's actually a very recent story. So
interesting.
So yeah, this was Tigan had locked up a contract, and I went to go walk the property. I was in Port Charlotte, and I was just walking, and it was vacant. The door was open. I was like, this is kind of typical, but really expecting a squatter or something to come at me with potentially a machete. You never know what you're going to get. But I'm coming up, and I see a police, like one of those big SUVs pull up, and I was like, oh man, I hope I don't get like some sort of trespassing, situation going on. But he pulled up, and he was just like, hey, I saw your car there. You don't really look like a tweaker. There's a lot of drug addicts in this, they come here squatting. I have to kick them out. So I was just making sure, but you don't look like that's what you are. So we're good. I was like, yeah, thank you. I was like, so you've dealt with this property? He's like, yeah. Just kind of chat a little bit about what we do with real estate. And he was like, huh, well, I deal with a lot of properties, like this, where there's a problem and it's a problem for the community. I can refer them to you, and, you're really helping my job out, and you're helping the neighbors out. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And he referred us a property that was actually a probate. And we just got that under contract today. But it was really, building relationships with people. You never know what is gonna come out of that. So, especially with people that are directly involved in the field in some capacity, like mail vendors, firemen, obviously law enforcement officers, building relationships with them in the community in whatever market you're targeting is going to pay massive dividends. So it's something to definitely not underestimate. Like a lot of people are like, okay, I'm just going to network with investors and people that I know directly are profiting in this industry. But I mean, again, you would be very surprised at the people in that industry that are not really in that industry and what they can bring you as far as value. A side note, that first deal I told you about that I got with Brett, I had met a contractor months and months and months before that. And I was just trying to figure out how to bring a buyer. And I called that contractor and I was like, hey, would you know anyone that would want to buy this house? And he was like, yeah, as a matter of fact, I know someone that was trying to buy it like months and months ago, but they couldn't get it because of title issues. And I was like, there we go. So
boom.
Yeah, you'd be very surprised at the value you can meet just talking to anybody in those communities. So.
Yeah. It's crazy because the first deal we were able to work on and figure out was that networking connection through Brett
Right.
on that crazy Arizona. Were you on that one?
Yeah.
Were you on the
Yeah.
Arizona?
He
I
actually
found the
was the
deal.
one that found it.
That was my
using
very,
his-
very first deal.
It's still,
Yeah.
it's the craziest thing. But like, because of that relationship, that
Mhm.
networking, thing, we're working together, you were able to find me
Yeah.
to help on that deal. And that was a crazy story on what really took it off on the probates and the
Yeah.
weird and different, and really thinking creatively. So, and tell everybody that story. Cause like, that's the Arizona experiment is on my
Yeah.
PowerPoints. I talk about it at presentations because that's a critical thinking, problem solving. I mean, we were going back and forth
Mhm.
at night about like, what's going on, what should we do, talking to the
The
other
other
attorney.
yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I
That
mean,
was
back and
wild.
forth.
Yeah.
And so I just I want you to explain it, but it was just funny because, like I said, that was actually my very, very first deal that I got from either cold calling, texting. I can't even remember anymore. But Dominic had told me it needed a probate, right? And at the time, like I said, that's my first deal. So I had no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I'm still over here learning the basics of real estate. And now we're talking probate, you know, now we're talking all these legal terms. And I'm like, Dominic, I'm looking at him like, I need you to run the show here because I don't know anything yet. So just going through that, everything with that specific probate situation, it has accelerated the knowledge, especially with probate, even with real estate that I have today, because there's just so much I had learned in that one. But yeah, if you want to go ahead and explain that.
I didn't even know you were on that one. That's so crazy because, we were talking back and forth. I know you came in the picture, like, I don't know what deal specifically, but I'm happy you saw that one because me and him are going back and forth about what is going on. Tell the story for everybody because it is so crazy. The Arizona experiment is wild.
So he used his analytical skills, that we kind of talked about, and it was some sort of filter on PropStream, and like 2 properties popped up. So he, skip traced the one and somehow was able to figure out an heir of the person who had passed away, and reached out to her over text. Kind of went back and forth over some time, and finally got it under contract. And what had happened was it was the mom's house in Southwest Florida, but then she had moved to Arizona to be at a care center, and passed away there. So obviously presents some unique challenges at the time to probate. But it was crazy. We literally, this was during the sweat equity period. We showed up at the house and hired a locksmith to basically like hack in and get the door unlocked for us. We bought a new lock at Walmart. I'll never forget. And we were just trying to screw the lock in and walk this property that was just sitting there vacant. But so that was how we contracted the property. And then through Brett, met you, kind of gave you the rundown, and you spoke with the heir, and kind of got that facilitated moving forward. But at the time, you hadn't done the so-called Arizona experiment. So we were under the impression it was going to need an additional probate in Arizona.
Yep.
And I was like, all right, well, we need an Al Nicoletti that doesn't exist in Florida. And I think you had found someone, he was in Arizona, and he was an older attorney from what I remember. And I remember months passing by and I was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And this guy just didn't really care to do anything with it at all. And you could tell like the file had probably been sitting on his desk collecting dust. It really, he probably thought, real estate investors, this isn't worth my time. So you were basically just like, all right, whatever, we're going to just do an experiment. And I don't really remember exactly what you did, but you were able to bypass that ancillary probate in another state, which is huge. And definitely, sped the deal up 10x, because we would have been sitting there probably still to this day if we had to do an Arizona probate. So
yeah, it was a crazy deal too, because for that first time, at that time, I was like, oh, we need to do the probate here, and then we have to get one
Yeah.
open there. And at the time, I didn't know Raya Lestana. I made that connection recently in Arizona, Arizona probate attorney, but I didn't know Raya then. So, I mean, we were just shooting from the hip, just trying to find really anybody that really had a shot for running probate. And I remember just going back and forth of like, I think I got a guy, you know, let me talk to this guy. And then I didn't hear back, and then you didn't hear back. And then it was like a back and forth. And what I liked about the collaboration, that working through the problem, was the fact that we realized it wasn't happening. Like what was going on over there wasn't happening. So that's when we had to be like, what's plan B? Like, what's the option? And then that's when we realized, wait a second, if it didn't have to be done over there, or there was nothing over there, we could just do it here. And that's why it was so interesting working through those problems, because had I not done that one, I don't know how that would have played out for the others. I'm sure over time there would have been one a year, 2 years later, oh, you know, the Ohio bypass, or the Pennsylvania experiment. But like that one is still memorable. And I'm like, I'm so happy we worked on that one. You guys know it's on the PowerPoint and everything too. Like it's there.
I'll never forget, you called me. You were like, we got it. We got it. The judge approved it. We're good. And I was like, yes.
Yeah. And it was like at 10 o'clock at night too. I'm like going through the e-portal system. I'm like, where's the order? Did we get it? I'm like, no way. Like there's no way. But the other crazy stuff, like, and this is the lead up to like you guys being really in finding the heirs and going through data. I mean, these are all these deals that kind of got you thinking about, do we want to get into this? Do we want to see if we could do this? And I'll never forget the story of the 25 beneficiaries that, and this was the story that I felt like could make you guys feel maybe we don't want to be in this, right? Like maybe this was the story of, we don't know if we want to be in this niche. We don't know if we want to get into this. But I'll never forget the story of Dominic calling me up one day and saying like, hey man, we got a deal. And there's 25 beneficiaries. It's already gone through probate. And what do we do? Tell everybody like how that all went down. And so I'll tell my version too.
I think you were handling it more so at the time. So if you want to touch base on
so you were on that one.
Yeah. So that was another deal I had found through, I think at the time we were still doing a lot of cold calling, which it was just the two of us. We were still, scraping money together to make it work. And so I was cold calling one day. I can't remember what list it was from.
It was actually at the time you were able to generate probate lists, and I think it was a probate list he'd given, if I'm not mistaken.
Honestly,
maybe not.
I can't remember.
Maybe not.
But it was a property I had come across, right? And I'm very, analytical to the point of like, most of the times I will not stop until I figure out who the point of contact is. Right. So with that one, it wasn't really that difficult because the property appraiser's website, the county property appraiser's website had showed unknown heirs of, right. And so, but it already had a personal representative, right? So the probate had already been started. So when I had reached out, I had, I think, like a 30, 45-minute conversation. It was one of the cousins of the property owner who had passed away previously. And he had told me that there was, other interest from other investors on the property, but fortunately, I was able to build such a good rapport with him that he was like, you know what, I like the offer that you guys are giving me and everything. And so keep in mind, at this time, we had absolutely no idea how long this would take. We knew one thing, which was the fact that they already had a probate attorney. Probate had already been started. And the other thing was, I think we knew by then that the property owner who had passed away had no direct relatives. So it was all just cousins.
Yeah. A side note on that, apparently he just didn't really like the family. So he directly didn't write a will, knowing that it would be just a mess dealing with all these cousins and beneficiaries and heirs. So
yeah. So we got it under contract, and we're dealing with the other with their probate attorney, right? And so no timeline. We thought maybe a couple months, right, to get it done. We thought, well, what do we have to lose, right? So we jumped into it, and as time went on, there was total of 25, 26 beneficiaries. Like I said, all cousins living across the country. I think they all lived in the US, but they were all living in different states, right? And they didn't really talk to each other. So we had hired a title company. A couple months go by, nothing's really getting done, right? So we reach out to the title company and we're like, what's going on here? And initially they said, well, we really only need the signature of the personal representative. And remember, I had called you at the time.
It was you that called me.
It was me. And
I couldn't remember if it was you or Dominic, but yeah, you called me.
I had called you to get your feedback on this because I said, well, this is what we know so far. The title company is telling us that we only need one signature from the personal representative. And I remember you had mentioned to me, no, you're going to have to get a signature from every single one of them. And I had remember getting off before I got off the phone with you. I said, I hope you're wrong.
Yeah,
I hope you're wrong, because I was like, well, if we need everyone's signature, how can we even get this done, right? And so, but at the time, I was pretty confident because I was like, well, that's 1 for 2 because the title company is telling me only one signature is needed, right? So another few weeks, maybe a month or two go by. And the title company gets back to us and they're like, well, we need the signatures. We need everyone to sign off on the deed. And I remember I had called you back and I said, Dan, you were right. You were right. So we keep going. And then in the meantime, we found out that 3 of the beneficiaries, 3 of the cousins had passed away as well. So we had to go through probate for all 3 of those while we're going through the main probate process as well. So that one took like a year
and a half.
Yeah,
I remember.
Yeah,
18 months, right? We're at the RIA meeting and you guys were like, we just closed on that deal. I'm like, what? The thing from right. 2020 that day.
And I remember, honestly, we were really lucky because our buyer that we were working with, or who we were partnering with on that deal, he was a very, very, I don't think we could have worked with a better partner to get that done because he was very patient. Right. So obviously he wanted to get the deal done, but he was very, very patient. And I was telling Dominic, I was like, I'm not sure if there's many other buyers out there who would wait over a year just to get this done. Right. Because keep in mind, we also had a lot of money tied up in escrow. We had, I think, total.
It was $15,000, which is a lot for like an off market cash, transaction.
Yeah.
So he had that tied up for like a year and a half, which is.
No, it was double that. It was 30,000.
Oh yeah, actually, because there was escrow for our purchase agreement and then escrow to us. It was actually 30,000.
30,000.
He had tied up.
Yeah. So that one took a while. And I forgot to mention, but we also had to go through numerous title companies too, because after a while, the first title company, well, they were just not really getting anywhere, right? So we were waiting, and so I got on the phone with them and I said, well, we kind of need to figure out what's going to happen here. And then I think that same day, they'd call me back and they said, hey, there's no way we can help you finish this. So they had pretty much told us, go find a different title company. So after that, we went to a different title company here in Jacksonville. And then things went downhill from there. Couldn't get it done with that title company either. Then we switched to a third title company after, I think, a week or so. We had to switch from there. So we went through 4 title companies.
Crazy.
And actually the last title company that was able to get this all done for us was located in Naples too.
Wow.
So they were local to us. So that was a huge help. That was definitely a huge help. And they did a great job. They were very, very patient on top of it. But yeah, it took a lot of effort. And the crazy thing was on one hand, it's a great thing that our buyer, our partner, was patient, but on the other hand, he got a very sweet deal because that was also around the time we had initially locked the property up under contract. Was it 2020?
It was the end of 2020.
Right. And that was before real estate really started heating up in Florida,
Yeah.
And so as time went on, our buyer ended up getting a hell of a deal.
Yeah, because the property value just kept appreciating and rising and rising and rising. So you got a good deal from his patience.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, in that kind of market to now,
right.
Sure.
Close to the water too.
Really?
Yeah, it was close to. You could see the water from the driveway.
Wow, what a snag.
Yeah.
Well, that story, like, again, that's another one that I talk about in the PowerPoints because while that's not something I saw personally like myself, but it's a theme that of things to look for if you're really diving in this crazy wild world, right? But the way I keep hearing it is when you were like, I hope you're wrong. I hope you're wrong.
I'll never forget that.
2 months later, you're like, you were right. You called it. And since then, two to three others died. I'm like, oh, here we go again. Like, so it's just crazy that it's great that you guys went through that and you closed, right? It's great that you closed on the deal. But it's again, seeing that from the beginning, I was like, oh boy, I hope this is not the one where you guys are like demoralized by what this is, because as you've seen, as it's gone, it's not always that way. It's not crazy. Like, there's a way to solve the problems. And since all of this, since going through these things, you've seen more crazy deals and, using systems like REI Sift and using data and all the other things that you use through public records. You've really gotten into this crazy, crazy world even lately. So tell us, like, what's going on right now that you guys are working on the innovative stuff and REI Sift and locating heirs and finding heirs. And, this is the good stuff. Y'all are watching out there. This is the good stuff, because over the last 2 to 3 years, Mark and Dominic have been able to find their groove, their niche, and look at the brands. I mean, you guys are building that out based on what's going on. Tell us what's happening now that you guys are doing. How are you going after and finding the deals and making it work for both of you?
Yeah, so I would say right now the two biggest niches that we're in are probate as well as vacant land. Vacant land, we just, as time went on, we noticed it's a lot less headaches than houses, and you can make, just as much on those particular properties as you would a house in some cases. So those are kind of where we're at right now in scaling up. He can touch base on the biggest thing a lot of these investors do is just kind of take a general list and just keep beating up the list, and then getting a new list. And I would say that the biggest change that we've made is becoming efficient with that data and knowing exactly from every one of those thousands and thousands and thousands of records that have been marketed through our callers and direct mail, who just hasn't been gotten a hold of. And then kind of narrowing down with like this microscopic lens on an investigative level and saying, well, look, if we haven't been able to market to this individual through this extended period of time, chances are no one else has also been able to get in touch with them. So how do we get in touch with them? And that's where Mark comes in. He just basically, I don't even know really how he does it, but he just goes
the secret sauce.
Yeah. I mean, you can touch base on that if you want.
Yeah. So, I mean, just going back in the very beginning when we first got started. So both Dominic and I were very impatient people, right? Like we want success today. Right.
Right.
And so when we first got started, we didn't have any capital. So we didn't have any dialers. We were really just, any list we could get our hands on. We had PropStream, which PropStream is great. It's a great starter kit, honestly, but we were dialing on our own phone. So we didn't have any dialers, nothing like that. Everything was very manual, right? And so I had watched a lot of YouTube videos and a lot of gurus talking about, pull a high equity list, like PropStream, wherever, high equity absentee. And so that's where we really started off with. And so, but like I said, we're both very impatient. So in the beginning, what we were doing was we would pull a list of, say, 1,000 records. And then after a couple of days, we were like, nah, we don't like this list. On to the next one, right? And then after a week or so, we were like, no, maybe let's try a different market or a different list. And so that's what we kept doing, right? And everything was very manual, and everything would just be in a Google spreadsheet, right? So if a property would show up on, say, 3-4 different lists, well, we couldn't really tell because it was just, like I said, it was very, very manual, and there was no really visual to help us out. So at I think fall of last year, I had come across Tyler Austin and REI Sift, and we were actually doing a webinar with Quentin Flores, and that's where we first found out about Tyler Austin. He had brought him on in his webinar, and so I had started looking more into REI Sift and what it does, and really started liking it because I was like, well, I think this can really help us solve this whole issue of having all these lists, and we're just not really seeing where we're able to get our deals from, and that sort of stuff. Plus, to add on to that, we were never really able to have that much success with the high equity lists, right?
Mhm.
In the beginning, we did, but as the market kept getting hotter and hotter, it was just we just weren't getting really anywhere with it. So
You weren't focusing on actually distressed homeowners who have some sort of problem, which is
right.
the whole premise of like, how you get a good deal. You have to solve a problem.
Yeah,
And that
messy
wasn't-
deals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly. And yeah, that's a very good point. Is we had really no idea what we were doing. We were just calling, seeing if people wanted to, sell their property, but didn't really understand the data game, didn't really understand the marketing game. And as I kept learning more and more about REI Sift, we started implementing it and uploading all of our lists there, so that when you pull, say, an additional list, you could see, well, these 5 records, for example, were also on a previous 3 list that we had pulled, right? Which previously we had no way of telling that. And so that's what I really started focusing on, and really organizing all of the lists and all of the records and making sure that they were properly tagged. And then that allowed us to really start tracking and seeing, okay, well, where are we having success, right? So all the deals that we're getting done, everything that we're moving, where are we having the most success, right? And that has really, really helped us out tremendously. But initially, so REI Sift, for you guys that don't know, it's really a marketing tool. It's really a marketing tool. But at first, I really just started using it as a list CRM. I just said, okay, well, let's just plug in all of our records here. At least everything's in one place. We can tag it. We know when everything was uploaded, all these records. We know where it came from, when it was skip traced, all that good stuff. And so really, as time went on, I started learning more and more about it, because Tyler, he does a great job, especially with you're in his Facebook group, right?
Oh yeah, he's a beast.
And he does an excellent job with he has challenges that he's coming out with all the time. And I mean, he's the knowledge and the gems that he gives out. It's just, I mean, I don't think there's anyone else really in the industry that gives out that much knowledge. And so I'd really started educating myself on REI Sift, and we started implementing it more and more and more. And then really this year was when we really dug in and started seeing, well, now that we've got, numerous callers, we've got a large team, and we're making so many calls a day. I mean, just I think last month we made 112,000 calls, right?
It was 130,000 calls in the month.
So
I mean, to me, I don't know what that number is, but that sounds like a lot.
It's right, yeah. And
so
so now we're able to actually see, okay, so out of the calls that we're making, who are the people that we're calling but not actually getting a hold of, right? Because that's important, because in the beginning we would just call someone, once, twice, and they didn't pick up, and we're like, well, on to the next one, right? But just really within the past 6 months or so, we had really started noticing, well, wait a minute. Well, if we call and they don't pick up the phone, that doesn't necessarily mean, it's not really anything motivated, right? That just means like we need to try harder. We need to dig deeper. We need to figure out what the situation is. And so through REI Sift, I was able to really start figuring out, okay, so these are the people that we just keep calling and calling and calling, but we're not getting anywhere with, right? And we use multiple softwares for skip tracing, so it's not just a one source, which definitely helps us out a lot. But now that we're able to see, okay, well, the people that are on, say, numerous lists, right? And we've tried marketing to, well, why are we not getting a hold of them? And what I started realizing was the reason we're not getting a hold of a lot of those property owners is because they're actually deceased. And that's really the case, I'd say probably 75% of the time.
Wow.
And oftentimes the property appraiser's website doesn't even really say it. But then when you really start digging into it and going to the county's official records website, that's when you're seeing, you start seeing death certificates. And then you start seeing all this information that allows, us to see, okay, well, this is exactly why we're not able to get a hold of them. And just recently, we really started digging more and more into these intuitive deals where we know, it's, say, the property's a tax delinquent, we know it's a probate, we know it's a vacant, or it's at least got those 3 vaxations, right? Where we know, okay, these 3 things, but that clearly shows no one's really keeping up with the property, right? And so what we really started focusing on recently is not having that all out mentality of like, let's just get a deal done, let's just get a deal done, but more so, let's focus on not running that volume game, but really maximizing the deals. And what has really allowed us to start doing that is really focusing in on all these properties, these records that we're not able to get a hold of, and just digging deeper, right? And trying to really get in contact with anyone, neighbors, family members,
Friends.
associates, anyone.
Yeah.
And like I said, oftentimes we're just seeing that it's either the property owner may have passed away or whatever the situation is. But in the beginning, what we used to do was just kind of give up, because we said, well, we've got, here's another 999 records. Let's just, put this one to the side.
We had that realization. That's what everybody else is doing on those particular records. They're giving
Right.
up. And it's like, this is more than likely a deal and nobody's reaching out to it. There's a massive barrier here that's preventing them from doing it. So if we can contact them, and a lot of people also don't have access to a good probate attorney. I think that's the other thing. So two massive barriers there where it's like, let's lock it up.
And there's
So-
deals out there,
and
right?
there's-
And
yeah.
there's tons. I
Yeah.
mean, if you're talking like 70% of what you're finding, right, are those people that are deceased. I mean, those are huge numbers, and people are leaving a lot on the table, right? So for everybody out there, I had Tyler Austin on season 1 of the Al Nicoletti Show. You got to go check that out, because what Mark and Dominic are talking about right now is something that Tyler was talking about a little bit on the show, but they're diving deeper on the perspective of the user, on the investor side of what that really looks like. Because Tyler talked about the buckets, the 4 buckets, and trying the first bucket. All right, those were warm leads, or maybe there was a cold lead. It goes into bucket number 2. And what they're talking about is that if you couldn't get them on the first one, it may go into bucket number 2, and most people are giving up on that lead. So you got to go check out that episode, and shout out to Tyler. Tyler, you're the man. You're crushing it with the RAI-SIF community. These guys love you. Mark and Dominic love you. And I was so happy when you guys told me that you were into RAI-SIF. And then the SIF Dojo came up, and I was like, you guys got to go to that. And how was that experience too? Like being there with Tyler in person and being a part of those guys and ladies that were there.
Oh, it was insane. It was insane. I mean, the knowledge that we gained within really just 2-3 days of that mastermind was just, it's insane. And really, the part of being in the same room with like-minded individuals who are, thriving with whatever they're doing. There were some investors who were focusing on fix and flips, some buying rentals, some were really focusing on the wholesaling side of things. But it was really cool to see, there was about 15 of us, give or take, right? About 15.
Yeah, I would say about 15.
And it was really cool to see all these other professionals from different states, different backgrounds. I mean, we met Jacob there too.
Cool.
He's located here,
Cool.
in Jacksonville. And that was just, to me, that was the favorite part, is really just getting to know these people. And I mean, to this day, we still talk to some of them, and the fact that we're able to turn to them and, tell them and really ask them, hey, I remember that you had spoken about what you're doing this, that, or this or that in your business. We're trying to do that, for example, but we're just getting started, or something's just not clicking for us. We reach out to them, and they actually, they get back to us and they help us out. So really building those, building our network and being able to, stay in touch with all these other professionals, because, there's always something that someone else knows or does that we don't, right? So the fact that we have, them to turn to, and even Tyler, I mean, he did a great job. I loved it. It was very good.
Yeah, it was unique seeing how everybody kind of had, someone was really, really dialed into their KPIs. Someone was really, really dialed into their management skills with, their scorecards. Other people had shared things that were specifically, it was like a unique direct mail piece to probates. And you could kind of see everybody, there is successful, but they're all doing things a little bit differently. There's no one size fits all. And I think that's really important too, in general. Like you don't want to just model yourself off of, what the gurus say. Everything is unique to your business and your business model. And that's, what I took away, at least from Sif Dojo for sure.
Interesting. Yeah. Finding your niche, finding your fit to everything.
Exactly.
And it's just fascinating that the deals that you were working on before REI Sift and all the whole program, and then now you're getting more into like, what are those deals and sifting through the data. It brings you back to the beginning about these are a lot of deals out here. These are things that are happening. How are you able to like, dive deeper into that with like the locating errors and skip tracing and, what systems and methods have you seen that works best for you when you come across those, right? Because you're basically saying there's a whole blue ocean when it comes to this, and it sounds easy, right? It sounds like, oh, here's the secret sauce. What is it, Mark? What is it, Dominic? And it's like, well, wait a second, it's a lot more intricate and time consuming, but rewarding at the same time if you could do it. What have been some things you've been seeing that's worked?
Right. Yeah. So in terms of these intuitive deals, I especially a lot of them, like I said, they're probates, and so what I try to focus on is just trying to obviously get as much information about the owner, whoever the owner is, and we use numerous skip tracing softwares, and in addition to that, really the most helpful thing to me is just going on the official records website, because you'll be amazed how much information you can find on these official records website for really every single county. I mean, I think in Florida, we're very lucky because I know there's some states where it's very, very difficult to get some of that information. And Florida does a very good job with their systems to allow you to go on there, check it out. But it's really just digging deeper and looking at obituaries, looking even on Facebook. I mean, so many people are on Facebook now where there's a lot of information that you can find on these. And then from there on, it's just really just building your steps and, trying to get closer and closer and closer to the point of contact. And really what it takes is having someone who can really do that due diligence. I mean, the deal we had locked up today, we locked it up for 50,000. After rehab value is about 275,000. So these are crazy deals, right? Now they take some time. They're not, get it under contract this week, lock it up, or close on it next week. Not at all. So these all take some time. But really the cool thing is if you have a team where, you've got someone really digging deeper and deeper. I mean, for this one, today's deal that we just locked up, it probably took me about 4 or 5 hours of just like really like due diligence and just like trying to find as much information as possible. So that's step one, but that, getting all that information only gets you so far if you also have the team that can reach out, right, to who we believe is the point of contact, or at least can get us closer to the point of contact. And up until very recently, we didn't really have that because I was very focused on, making sure all of our cold callers had enough data. And it was just like, I just felt like it never stopped. It was just, get them another list. And then I would have maybe a week or two to kind of breathe. And then 2-3 weeks later, they're like, well, I need another list. Right. And until now, it was just costing us so much money to just keep skip tracing new records. Exactly.
Wow.
And so with this, it has really, our ROI has shot through the roof because our cost of really getting these leads and deals, I mean, they're already in our system, right? So it's not like we have to pull an additional list. These are already people that we've been trying to contact, but we can't get in touch with, right? So it's not really costing any money to generate that specific record or opportunity. So that's really what I've been focusing on is trying to automate that side of things where we have, we have a team that can really dig deeper and figure out what's going on, what's the situation, why can't we get in contact with, if we can't get in contact with them, what can we do to get in contact with them? And step two is having that team, having someone that can just call anyone, get on the phone with anyone and say, hey, this is a situation. Can you help me get in contact with the right person? Because you'd be surprised. People are very, very helpful. Even neighbors, you reach out to certain neighbors, you ask them, hey, we're trying to get in contact with so-and-so. Neighbors know a lot. You'd be surprised. Some neighbors are like, yeah, so and so, their kids live out of state, blah 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 blah, but they're able to point us in the right direction, and that's really what matters. Is each time, it's taking one step closer, one step closer, and so being the ability to be able to implement these intuitive deals has really just elevated our growth recently because it's just these deals are just absolutely huge, and in addition to that, it's also allowing us to now start filling up our pipeline of not just deals that are going to be closing in like the next 30 days or so, but actually deals that we know are going to take time because they have to go through probate, or this is going on, that's going on, and so having a mix of really both worlds has really just elevated our growth. But one thing I can say is if you're just starting off, it's not a good method of really scaling, because it really does take time, right? To get after these. But I think if I could start over, having the knowledge I have, zero capital, starting fresh, I would definitely just start with REA Sift, get in my car, start, driving around, start building a list of properties, and just seeing what's the situation. Clearly, someone's not the owner's not keeping up with the property, so the chances, of success is much higher.
Yeah, no, and it's crazy. Like today, you guys are rolling around Jacksonville or Jax
Right.
Beach, and you guys are like, "Wow, this is an awesome place for like the distressed probate properties," because you're like, it when you see it, right?
Yeah.
You're always out in the field. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
you're traveling, you're seeing this stuff, so you can spot it, right? But what's
100%.
it's really interesting about what you're saying, Mark, is like you're building the pipeline, right? Which is important too. You want to build what you can now because it's eventually going to generate.
Right.
Obviously making sure, everybody's on board, everybody's got the right stuff in order, but eventually it's going to pop. And when it pops, it's going to, be really lucrative on those deals. And what's again interesting is it kind of loops back to the beginning about if you're doing those kinds of deals, you got to find the people that are going to be the Dominic 2.0, the Mark 2.0, and that's having a great acquisition assistant in Tigan and getting more people on the data side, because you want them to think like you. So that's what you're looking for, is to think on your feet and think on what you would do next so you can tackle those deals. And I think that's huge. Finding heirs, locating heirs. I mean, whether it's land where the people are out of state or in state, for properties. And it's fascinating too that you talked about the public records. Dave Day was on the show at the start of season 3, and he was talking about public records are a huge opportunity, right, in Florida. And then I'm on the call with Carl Spielvogel, who was on the show in season 2, and Carl was like, I'm in North Carolina. We're doing all these crazy, weird deals with partitions and, probates. And he said somehow there was one deal that popped up in Florida. He's like, boy, you guys got a great public record system here in Florida. And I thought to myself, I'm like, yeah. But it's something a lot of people take for granted. I mean, a lot of the other states don't have those opportunities. So it's fascinating seeing that side of what you all are seeing, and it's growing. I mean, it's constantly booming for you both and finding those deals.
100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
So, I mean, tell everybody, like, what's on the horizon? Like, where does it go from here? What's next on the radar? I mean, obviously you're going to keep growing out the team. I hope you both have, at the end of the year, by the end of next year, 5 Tigans, 6 Marks, you could Mark 2.0s that you could find and build out the team. What's the vision from where you're going based on what you're seeing now?
Yeah. So as far as our wholesale operation, really tweaking it so that it's continually becoming as efficient as possible and mastering this data game, and essentially just taking over the state of Florida, so that this method that we've mentioned. I mean, our acquisitions manager said, what's crazy is from the former way we were doing things. A lot of these people are like, you're the 10th person to call me in the last hour. We're marketing now to an efficient level where these people have not been contacted, which presents a very unique opportunity for the business. So on that angle, I would say, scaling to cover the state of Florida. But what we've mentioned getting into is developing in the horizon. We know a decent amount of people that are, they develop single family, builds as well as commercial. I know that's something on the horizon we would really like to get into, specifically because we've dealt with a lot of land. So we kind of have that foundation of understanding the basics.
Right.
That's the simplest part of it. Is to develop, you need land, and you need to know, what is involved with that land, permitting wise and zoning wise. So I think that's one angle. And then the other angle we've talked to, which is the bigger horizon down the road, is really kind of having, a hedge fund where we're investing in the money markets, the bond markets, and then as well as venture capital tied into that, having a holding company within that hedge fund to take, companies within completely varying industries, whether that's entertainment, whether that's hospitality, real estate, like we mentioned. I think that's the bigger vision here. And I think wholesaling real estate, this business is going to propagate to that point. So,
Yeah, no. And it's, what you guys are doing, it's going to head that way, right? Like if you're able to see, I don't know, maybe you guys are going to become the big behemoth when it comes to messy deals.
Yeah.
And a year from now, you're going to be like, all right, the hedge fund thing, that's out of the way. We're like conquering it, like the Carls and the Daves out there.
Yeah.
So, but that could be huge. And again, when it comes to the land part of it, that's what's interesting is that, there was one point I was like, those quads and those sixplex and, the multifamily units are really cool because you could take them and do Airbnb, but, to buy them, it's really expensive. But what if you buy a lot of land that's, and then you build on it? Are you really going to save, and not having to pay the premium top dollar price? Right. And still you can keep it, you can hold it, you can Airbnb it, you can do whatever you want with it, or sell the land, actually do whatever you want with it. And I think this would be cool for you guys if, you get into construction or building and developing and growing what you're going to do. I can't wait to see it. I'm always like, what are you guys doing? What's happening? I love, following the story.
100%.
So, guys, this has been awesome. We got into everything from, the partnership getting started, everything in finding crazy, messy deals and going through the different systems. So crazy that people just drop those leads, we
used to as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And can you think about how many other people do that, right? They leave those kind of leads on the table, and just getting through all the crazy stuff. What a world and what a beginning for you guys. It's going to be a huge journey. And I love seeing it. And tell everybody about the brand too. Cause this is relatively new thing with the Florida selling out, but the brand, what's the plan with that?
We're going to start probably creating more merchandise. We're going to get you a polo and
let's do
it. So we're working on really the branding right now. We have a website, but we're going to switch it up and make it, even more tailored to Florida Sell now. So that's kind of the mission right now, is figuring out exactly what that looks like. We have a plan and an idea. Now it's more so, making sure we can follow through A to Z to see that end result. So we want to make it, we're thinking of adding a brokerage at some point to it, because I think Florida Sell Now is a good brokerage name. So, we'll see. We'll keep you posted.
Keep those feelers out there. Start going for it. And I just want to let you all know that, we've had people comment and post, Robert Rodriguez, my guy out there, West Palm Beach, Florida. What's going on? He's out there. Matthew's watching, Delsa's watching, and Jay Rosen and Spencer Collins just posted, I need some merch. So there you go. It's on, guys. You got to get that merch going, get the polos, get the hats going. As soon as you get the hat, it's going on the Al Nicoletti shelf. It's going to go right there. And, we'll have it up there. But, before we get to final words, final thoughts, I got something for you guys. Anytime I get an in-person guest that comes in the studio, I got something for you guys. So
I'm excited.
You got it. So, I got the t-shirts for you. The Al Nicoletti t-shirt for Mark.
That's amazing. Look at that color.
So I know you guys wanted the navy, but this is one of the rare colors in the box. So this was the indigo, and I was like,
prefer
no,
this.
like
Take it.
want to give you guys the rare color versions of the Allen. Here we go.
This
So that's
is amazing.
Mark, that's
Thank you.
Mark's. And then this is Dominic's right here.
Perfect.
Wow, this is amazing.
Perfect. I'll be repping this.
Yeah, there you go.
I
Yeah.
prefer this.
I like this.
I
Yeah.
prefer this over the Navy. Honestly, this is amazing. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. No,
This is-
I love that you guys were able to come. So just so you know, they drove all the way from Naples to come up here. I mean, I appreciate that so much. I mean, for me, setting up everything in the studio and having done it so virtual for so long, it's special when I get people coming in the studio, but even more so when they're traveling just to come in the studio for the show and share your story, share your experience. So thanks
Cool.
guys so much for coming on
Absolutely.
and being on the show. And I loved it. And
Yeah.
I want to see what you guys are doing in 2 years. I want to see the 2-year update. I want to see not even just going into next year. I want to see the vision go even higher for you guys. And I want you guys back on as the Mark and Dominic update when we have that season, when that comes out. I want to see the growth. I want to see the partnership thrive. I want to see the business just grow out and have massive success. So
Definitely.
get ready for that. It's on. I know
We'll have
Mark's
to mark
it
Mark's
down.
thinking right
Yeah.
now. He's like, all right, so we got to build out
Yeah,
the
we're
team.
planning already.
The analytics says we're going to plan out the team, and
Yeah.
Dominic's going to go find more Tegans, and just keep going. So
Absolutely.
before we hop off, and I always do this for all my guests. I mean, final words, final thoughts on anything that you're working through, you're going through, and anything that's inspirational. Just let it rip.
Sure.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, biggest thing I can say, biggest advice I can give to anyone is consistency. I mean, like I said earlier, Dominic and I were both very, very impatient. We always want to get the results right now. We don't want to wait. But the biggest thing we've noticed over time is that this is a marathon. And this is going to be failures. There's going to be times when you want to just give up and not do this anymore. We had plenty of those. And really, the reason we're here is because we never gave up.
Yeah.
We just stay consistent. And that's the number one advice I can give.
Amazing. Dominic.
That's what I was going to say to that effect is if you can, have a goal in mind of what you want, or if you want to build a business or X, Y, and Z, whatever it is in life, it could be fitness, relationships, whatever. If you have that kind of in your mind, and you apply effort to it every day, and you can take, those punches daily, monthly, and keep going and keep going and keep going. At some point, statistically speaking, it's going to pan out and you're going to make it. You just have to keep going. It might take 30 days. It might take a year. It might take 10 years. It might take, 50 years, but at some point it's going to pan out for you. And if you want it as bad as you think you do, just never, ever, ever give up. Keep going because it'll be worth it. So
Love it.
100%.
Keep going, guys. Love it.
Appreciate you.
Love that you
Thanks
guys
so
for
much.
having us on.
Yeah, love that
This
you
was
guys
amazing.
drove up here, come up here for the show, and again, I can't wait to see the growth. We always keep in touch. I want to see what's going on, and I hope it keeps booming with the crazy different leads
For
that
sure.
have massive spreads and massive growth. So again, like I said, the 2-year update. I want to see what's going on.
Make it
I
happen.
want to see that development happening. Dominic's going to call me. He's going to be by the beach side building the quad. So
Yeah, there we go.
it's going to be
There
cool.
we go.
So I'll
Yeah.
see you soon, guys. All right. All right.
Appreciate it.
All right, guys, it's a wrap on the Al Nicoletti Show tonight on Mark and Dominic on what an episode. If you weren't able to, or maybe you tuned in later, if you weren't able to see the episode, you got to go back and watch it from the beginning, talking about their journey starting in the real estate world, young hustlers in the Florida market, and they're going to kill it. They're going to keep going all over the Florida market and tackling the crazy, messy, weird deals. But the stories behind before they got to this point are really fascinating. And some of the struggles and going through crazy deals, that's been a lot of what the episode really talked about, and the unique partnership between the two of them. And as I'm sure a lot of people know, just because you get into real estate, a lot of people think, oh, we got to find that partner. Maybe sometimes it doesn't work. But for them, this whole partnership thing has really blossomed and it is working. And I constantly see it grow more and more, and it's amazing. So you got to go back and watch the episode if you didn't get to check it out. And I love you, all you fans out there that watch. Everybody that's watching the episode and commenting, thank you so much for watching. And of course, if you want more content like this, make sure you go check out the Al Nicoletti YouTube channel, the Facebook business page, the personal page, the Al Nicoletti Show, which is on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. And of course, you can check out all the micro content dropping on Instagram and Facebook on probates, quiet titles, a weird and different world that we always see in that Florida market. And there's tons of content dropping all the time. And I will see you all next Monday. Yes, Monday. There's no Wednesday show next week, but Monday at 9 p.m. for a very special show on the Intelligent Banker. Can't wait to show you the guests that are coming up, but it will be Monday at 9 p.m. No show Wednesday. So everybody that's gonna be tuning in Wednesday, don't jump in on Wednesday, jump in on Monday, and it's gonna be a great show. So again, thank you all so much for watching. Go back and watch the episode again. It was a great episode. I'll see you next week, Monday, 9 p.m. Have a great night.